Well, hello and welcome to our continuing devotional through the book of Colossians. We're currently at Colossians chapter 3. We're going to be looking at verses 8 through 10. Here's what they say. But now you must put them all away. Anger, wrath, malice, slander, and obscene talk from your mouth. Do not lie to one another, seeing that you've put off the old self with its practices, and have put on the new self, which is being renewed in the knowledge after the image of its creator. So Paul's continuing to talk about how Christians should live. He talked in the very first part of verse 8 about three inward acts of ill will toward another, these negative, sinful emotions of anger, wrath, and malice. We talked about those just briefly in our last devotional. But then he switches and talks about three outward acts of animosity. They come from the anger, the wrath, and the malice. And that's slander, obscene talk, and lying to one another. He talked about those in verses 8 and 9. Now, slander is a word that in our culture is usually sometimes used in a legal way, as a legal definition of speaking falsely, maliciously about another person. But in the Bible, the word slander really isn't related to whether the speech is false or deceptive, but rather whether it's malicious and negative. What's the intent of this speech? Even when you say something that is factually true, but is intended to harm or done in anger or malice or hostility, that is slander. And the Bible calls us to step away from that. That's not what we're supposed to be as Christians. He also says get rid of obscene talk. And while I would fully agree, profanity and crude language should not be a part of a Christian's vocabulary, that's not the context here. This word generally referred to crude or vulgar language against another person. They are such a blank, or he or she is a blank. So he's again speaking about relationships and speaking with hostility and malice toward another person. And then he says in verse 9, do not lie to one another. Again, deception's always wrong, but here the deception and the lying to one another is probably what we would call gossip. Putting another person down, telling the untruth out of hostility toward another person. We must put these things away because we've put off the old self and we're putting on the new self, which is created to be like God. He uses this imagery of changing clothes. Now, when I was a kid, sometimes I would help my dad with fiberglass work. Now, if you don't know what fiberglass is, you don't want to know. It's terrible stuff, and fiberglass gets these like shards of very minute glass, literally glass, all over you, all over your clothes. It's just impossible to get out. And you could not wait to get out of those clothes because they itched you, they stung you, they irritated your skin. And once you got out of them, you never thought about, I'll go home and take a shower and put those back on, because they're not what you want. You want to put on something fresh, new, something good. And that's kind of the imagery Paul's using here. He says, you know what you used to be. You know the kind of language that used to come out of your mouth. You know the brokenness in your relationships. Don't let that happen anymore. Put on the new self, which is created to be like God, after the image of its creator. God is loving and he's kind. And even when he speaks like hard words to us, they're never done with harshness. They're always done redemptively. They're always done to help us. And we're supposed to be like God, pure, holy, loving, forgiving, kind, uh, uh, and so forth. And hopefully you and I will pursue that same course in our life. So watch our words. First of all, watch our thoughts. Is there malice, hostility, anger, hatred, those kinds of things? Because that's the root. But also watch out for the fruit of slander, of vulgar, mean-spirited language, of lying about another person. All of this should no longer be a part of the Christian's life, and I trust it's no longer a part of your life. Have a blessed day.